Wake up, Chief. I need you.
I've been a fan of the Halo series since the first game in 2001. Not only did it make the Xbox a success for Microsoft, but it's also one of the games that helped bring first-person shooters to the console format. While the gameplay itself was fairly straightforward and fun, I was also taken by the cool science fiction story about two warring sides, the humans and the Covenant, stumbling upon ancient technology with a not-so-subtle allegory for religious extremism thrown in. The Master Chief Petty Officer 117 is the somewhat silent protagonist of the series. He's a super soldier called a Spartan, and character-wise, he's a bit of a blank slate. Originally described as a Clint Eastwood type of few words, we never get to see his face properly, which was all done on purpose to allow the player to better inhabit the character. He's accompanied by the AI Cortana, who more than makes up for Chief's lack of personality.
Oh, I didn't realize. He's your pal, is he? Your chum?
Do you have any idea what that bastard almost made you do?
Thanks for the tank. He never gets me anything. I know what you're thinking, and it's crazy.
So, stay here.
Unfortunately for us both, I like crazy.
Game-wise, her function is all about exposition and directions. As the series progressed, you find out just how connected the two of them are, not only in the games, but also in other related media.
I do know how to pick 'em.
Lucky me.
When I first began what we used to call costuming, I discovered that there were fans out there making their own Spartan armor. Some techniques were complex Hollywood-level stuff, and some were more homemade and backyard built. Definitely more my level, and I wanted in on this. But when it came to deciding what to wear for my very first convention in 2009, I was torn. It was a choice between Master Chief and a character from another game I really enjoyed, Marcus Phoenix from Gears of War. Phoenix won out that year because by the time I decided to go to AvCon, I only had a few weeks to build his outfit, and so I left Chief for the following year. After lots of research and joining up with the 405th, a Halo costuming forum, this ended up being an 8-month build using the Pepakura method and materials like fiberglass and builder's bog to create the version of the Chief's armor as seen in Halo 3. It was around that time that work was being really shit and not paying me on time for many weeks. Of course, bills and the usual day-to-day expenses were the priority, so this almost had to be put aside. But as a really wonderful gesture, my best friend at the time offered to lend me some cash in order to complete the suit in time for AvCon. Finishing the night before the con, as is my way, I entered Chief in the cosplay contest and won second place for Best Male Cosplay. I don't recall what got first, and to be honest, I don't think anyone does. I was proud of that win, and the effort I put into the armor. It was a great feeling. Proud as I was also aware of how average a job I did with the fiberglass on most of the pieces. It was my first time using it, and of course I rushed it. It was scratchy, bits would dig into me, and it was a lot more brittle than it should have been. Despite this, I wore it a lot to a variety of events. So much so that it began to break and chip because of my rushed work. Months after its debut, I decided that it wasn't worth the effort to keep repairing, so I had another idea. Moments after stepping off stage at AvCon, I already had an idea for next year's major project. After my then best friend asked if she could join in on that, she spent the following weeks convincing me to try EVA foam. At that point, it was still a new technique, and I was still wanting to use more rigid materials, but I eventually relented. When Chief's armor started falling apart, I thought this was a good opportunity to practice with foam and replace those parts instead of repairing them. Over time, all the parts below the helmet were eventually replaced with new foam versions, which were not only much lighter and more comfortable to wear, but they were easier and cheaper to make as well. The helmet remained because it was the most successful of the fiberglass components. Fiberglass Chief lasted roughly 8 or 9 months. The new foam version went on for another 4 years. An impressive effort considering I wore him to every single costumed event. So much so that I became known for it on the local scene. For the longest time, it was my favourite costume and my go-to outfit for whenever I needed something impressive to wear. It could definitely be cumbersome, but it felt like a second skin. After about 4 years of that version, it was time to retire the suit and upgrade to a new one. Which one? Well, I ended up with 2 options. In the lead up to the 2012 release of Halo 4, 343 Industries produced a web series called Forward Unto Dawn. It was a prequel that helped explain the connection between the Chief and a new character in Halo 4, Commander Lasky, as well as offer a glimpse into what Cortana was going through after the events of the third game. I loved the look of the younger Chief's armor, the design of which was taken from the animated anthology Halo Legends. That segment was directed by Shinji Aramaki, who's known for pioneering Japanese CG in films like the Appleseed series, as well as his mech designs. He worked on the original Transformers cartoon. For a while, this was the frontrunner. Chief's new armor in Halo 4 was meant to be one of those unspoken visual upgrades to mark 343 taking over all things Halo after the original creators Bungie left Microsoft. Despite there being obvious visual cues between the new and the old designs, I wasn't instantly sold on it, but I didn't hate it either. Although the more I looked at images of the new suit, the more I warmed to it. It wasn't until I finally played and finished the game that everything changed for me. Halo 4 is set 4 years after the events of the third game, where the Master Chief and Cortana are left adrift in space aboard the wreckage of the Forward Unto Dawn. They encounter an ancient threat called the Didact. Blah blah blah, Didact wants to wipe out humanity, blah blah blah, they have to stop him. Pretty standard stuff. But what really grabbed me was the much larger emphasis this time on story, especially the relationship between Chief and Cortana. While it was hinted at in previous games, it became the heart of Halo 4's story. Smart AIs like Cortana have a lifespan of only 7 years. She's been active for 8 and is succumbing to a deterioration known as rampancy.
Our cognitive processes begin dividing exponentially according to our total knowledge base. We literally think ourselves to death.
This element of the story was inspired by the personal experiences of the game's creative director, Josh Holmes.
At the beginning of Halo 4, my mother was diagnosed with dementia, and over the course of the production of the game, I watched her deteriorate as a human being and become someone that I couldn't even recognize. And, that was really hard, but it was also an inspiration to me to want to tell Cortana's story.
This resonated with me as my family has been affected by dementia in the past, with the passing of my grandfather. So not only do they have to save the known galaxy, the Chief also has to find a way to save his best friend. This is where the blank slate Master Chief developed into an actual character. For the first time, this weapon of war had to deal with his humanity, while Cortana, an artificial life form, struggled with her own mortality.
Before this is all over, promise me you'll figure out which one of us is the machine.
Their relationship is based on relying on and looking after one another. And like any relationship, when you experience so much together, you develop a bond that strengthens with those experiences.
It was my job to take care of you.
We were supposed to take care of each other. And we did.
Halo 4 is basically a platonic love story. This is what sold it for me, and the reason I chose this version of the armor. Telling such a human story in what's normally a testosterone-driven action game was quite an achievement. Sure, it may have put off some fans, but this is what made the game for me.
Your compassion for mankind is misplaced.
I'm not doing this for mankind.
As I get older, I have a better appreciation for how important story is, as well as the importance of the connections and relationships we form with other people. Meaningful friendships, deep relationships, emotional intimacy rather than physical experiences, although they're nice too. I began wearing Halo armor because Master Chief was a cool looking character. Over the years, this has evolved into something more. I even hinted at earlier how the first version I made was influenced by my own past relationship with someone. Nothing I do is ever 100% finished, and even after a year, the current suit needs a few adjustments and extra details. It's a process I really enjoy and continually learn from. It's also the outfit that helped me become more visible and known in the local community. Sure, it's fake armor, but I do feel somewhat protected wearing it, the psychology of which I may save for another time. I feel an energy when I wear these costumes. There's a strut or a swagger when I walk and how I carry myself. When I wear this, not only does it represent my passion for making, but also symbolizes an aspect of humanity that I value and cherish, how we connect with other people. I love wearing it. I feel awesome when I do. It feels good. And of course, it's fun. So, yeah, quite the sappy motivation for what is essentially a walking tank. Bet you weren't expecting that one, eh?